I walked into Grace's wedding without an invite and felt every eye jump to me, then jump away. The church in New York was old stone and soft light, a place where people murmur like the walls can hear. My heels clicked too loudly on the aisle, and I wanted to shrink, but I kept walking. I had been told all my life to be small, to make space for others, to say thank you for crumbs. Not tonight. I reached the last pew on the left and stopped, hands on the polished wood. The flowers smelled like sugar, like the cake to come. I saw my mother, Linda, smoothing her dress, pretending not to see me. My father, Robert, did not pretend. He turned, lifted his hand, and pointed like I was a stain on a white tablecloth. "Look at your sister," he said to anyone close enough to hear. "She's a success. You're a failed girl. No one wants to see you here." His voice was flat, the kind of voice he used when he told me I would never keep a job, never keep a friend, never keep myself. The words fell heavily. I let them hit me and pass through. I had heard worse. I looked at Grace. She stood near the altar, golden and sure. She had that new Miami smile, the one she bought and paid for in neat appointments. She gave me the smallest nod, like I was a delivery person who had taken the wrong door. I thought about the bills that sat quietly in my email, the ones from the band, the florist, the hotel in Manhattan with the Skyline Suites, the dream package with the open bar and the gold chairs. I had paid them all. I had paid for the rehearsal dinner in Boston last month and the bachelorette weekend in Chicago and the custom veil shipped from London, and I had not asked for a thank you. I had signed my name and moved on. No one in that church knew the shape of my life. They did not know about my house in Brooklyn, the brownstone I bought for $3.5 million when the market dipped and the city felt tired. They did not know about the small garden behind it, where I grew rosemary and mint and tried to grow lemons even though the air was wrong. They did not know about my bank dashboards, neat and plain. The numbers lined up like a choir. Balances, gains, notes from my banker, Marcus, in clean bullet points. They did not know that I had $710 million spread across places with boring names. They did not know that I was the quiet storm that had paid for this day. I felt a laugh rise in me, sharp and bright. It wasn't a cruel laugh. It was a laugh that sounded like a key turning. I thought of the nights I had worked when the city slept, eyes sore, fingers cold, tracing terms and risk and upside, buying what others sold, selling what others clung to. I made calls. I waited when waiting was the work. I was not a lucky girl. I was a patient woman. I had made money in dollars, some of it from people who never learned my name, who thought I was a man because my emails were short. I had learned to let them think whatever made them feel tall. Dad kept his finger up like a signal. The usher shifted, unsure if he should move me, like I was a wrong note in a song. For a long second, I looked at my father's hand and saw all the years inside it. The point, the push, the don't do that, the why can't you be like your sister, the old stories he told about me that were not true but were easy to carry. I thought of the first job he laughed at, the first raise he said was cute, the first time I told him I was buying a house and he said, "With whose money?" I had not answered then. I would answer now, but not with words. I turned. I walked out the way I had come, slow and steady, each step a clear beat on the stone. A few heads turned again. Most stayed forward. I did not blame them. Weddings are about the picture, and I was not the picture. Outside, the New York sky had that steel color that shows up before rain, and the wind cut down the block like a blade. I stood for a moment on the steps and looked at the city that had made me sharp. I loved it, and I didn't. It was like family that way. It gave, it took, it taught, and sometimes it lied. A black car was idling at the curb for someone else. I lifted my hand, and the driver waved me in. "Where to?" he asked. His name card said Daniel in neat print. His accent sounded like the Midwest, flat and kind. "Downtown," I said. "Brooklyn Bridge, then Carroll Gardens." I liked to cross the bridge when I needed to think. It felt like leaving and returning at the same time. The car pulled into traffic, and the city opened in slow frames. A deli with a man stacking apples, a girl in a white dress carrying flats in her hand, a cluster of tourists pointing at a bus like it was a boat. I took a long breath and felt the weight leave my shoulders. In the glass of the window, My face looked calm. I thought, this is the last time I will take that kind of hit, and stay in the room. We drifted onto the bridge. The river was a dark ribbon, and the wind polished the water into scales. I remembered the London rain on my coat years ago, when I had walked along the Thames and promised myself I would build a life that could not be pulled from under me. I had kept that promise. I had done it in America with American grit, and I had paid for it with long days and long silence. People see a woman alone and call it sad. I see a woman alone and call it free. I smiled at that, a small smile that stayed. By the time we reached my block, the rain had started, soft and careful, like it didn't want to ruin the night. My house waited with its quiet face and its tall door. I tipped Daniel in cash, dollars folded once, more than he expected. For the rain, I said, and for the drive. He thanked me, and I went up the steps and let myself in. The air inside smelled like lemon oil and paper. On the kitchen island sat the silver laptop that had changed my life more than any blessing from my family ever had. I set my clutch down and took off my shoes. My phone buzzed on the counter, a text from an old friend, Maya. Are you okay? I looked at the screen, then at the dark window, where my reflection stood strong and alone, and I answered, I am now. I let the door close behind me and stood in the quiet of my Brooklyn house, the kind of quiet that makes your breath sound loud. The kitchen lights washed over the marble island, and I set my clutch beside the silver laptop that had carried me farther than family ever did. This house was mine in the most simple way. I had wired $3.5 million and signed a deed. Oak floors, tall windows, a lemon tree in a clay pot on the balcony that I named Joy because she tried so hard in the wrong climate. I touched her small leaves, then opened the laptop. The marble felt cold under my wrists, like a steadying hand. My inbox was its normal careful stack. At the top was the morning brief from my banker, Marcus Rivera, who favors short lines and clear numbers. Below it sat a flagged note from my lawyer, James Whitaker, who writes like a man who still believes in letters on paper. James had gathered 3 fresh requests from Grace, a down payment for a condo in Miami, a car upgrade in Chicago, and a luxury flight package to San Francisco for a honeymoon they'd remember forever. He had added a soft caution in the margin. Are you comfortable sustaining these gifts? Which was his way of saying, you don't owe them this. He knew I would pay. I always had. I paid because money to me was easier than words, and because dollars bought a silence that love could not. Not tonight. I opened the dashboard that showed the network of accounts like streets in a perfect map. Balances lined up in clean rows, each with notes I had written to myself. Park here, move by Q3, cap at $15 million, rebalance 60/40ths. The numbers were simple. The feelings were not. I moved through the list with the calm I save for storms. First, the cards are tied to my family. I saw the names in small gray text: Robert's fuel card, Linda's boutique line, Grace's lifestyle account, and closed them in order. Confirm, confirm, confirm. Then I ended the autopays for their phone plans, their club dues, and the cloud storage Grace used to back up photos of her new kitchen. I canceled the tiny streaming bill Dad liked to brag about paying, and I smiled when I hit end. I froze the trust that sent Grace $25,000 each month with the note sister stipend, a phrase that had felt cute once and now felt like a lie. When it was done, the dashboard looked like a cleared field after snow. In 5 minutes, I had changed the air in my own life. I sent James a line. All family-linked accounts closed. Trust frozen. Please update letters. And put my laptop to the side. I stood at the window and watched the rain bead down the glass. The city outside kept moving, sirens and tires, and the hum I know by heart. Inside, I felt still, like a new page had been placed in front of me and my pen had been set down with care. My phone buzzed. Maya, are you sure you're okay? I told her yes. She said, dinner? She always offers food when I'm hurt because she believes in warm plates and chairs that face each other. I love her for that. Not tonight, I wrote. I'm leaving. She sent a heart and then a line that made my throat tight. Proud of you for choosing you. I walked through my house and checked the rooms as if I were a guest who had borrowed them. In the front parlor, the long blue couch faced two framed photos of the Atlantic taken from a pier in New Jersey. In the study, a map of America hung above the desk, small flags pinned where I had made my first gains. A battered duplex in Cleveland I had bought for $82,000 in a winter so cold the pipes cracked. A foreclosed cottage near Savannah that I bought for $119,000 and sold 2 years later for $340,000 after sanding, painting, and planting a line of rosemary that grew like a promise. I had a flag in New York for my first million, and one in London for the first deal I closed in pounds, a tiny nod to Europe that made me smile. I did not keep trophies. I kept notes. On the shelf sat a binder labeled, "Rules I Follow," written in a plain hand. Rule 1. Never spend to be seen. Rule 2. Pay in full or not at all. Rule 3. Give without losing yourself. Back in the bedroom, I pulled a small suitcase from the closet. I packed like a woman who has learned not to carry what hurts. One pair of jeans, a white shirt that fits just right, a soft navy sweater, sandals, swimwear, 3 paperbacks with bent corners, a linen dress that moves like water, and the gold ring my grandmother left me when she said, "By land, not applause." I slid in a leather folder that held my passport and a stack of cards, all in my name. I added a framed photo of me on a beach, hair wild, eyes half closed, my laugh so real I can hear it when I touch the glass. I zipped the bag and set it by the door. I sat again at the kitchen island and opened a clean page in a thin notebook. I wrote a list in straight lines, the way James taught me in a courthouse hall when I was 23. Find a small house near water. Swim every morning. Speak only when I mean it. Spend on peace. Give, but wisely. I added a last line, go to Hawaii, and underlined it twice. America is large enough to start over inside it, and the word Hawaii felt like a key I had been holding for years. I did not need more time with people who used my money as a mirror. I needed time with the ocean. I sent Marcus a note. Pause discretionary transfers to family. Keep cash levels at $60 million. Move the rest per plan. And he replied in 5 minutes. Understood. Proud of you. I picture him in his glass office near Wall Street, tie loosened, sleeves rolled. A man who knows where every dollar sleeps. Marcus once told me that wealth works best when it is boring. He is right. My money had grown in quiet ways. In long holds, in clean contracts, in ugly houses made good. There were no tricks. There was time. There was patience. There were nights when my only company was a spreadsheet and a clock. Grace called. I let it go to voicemail and then listened. "Hey," she said. "I saw some payment issues. Can you check? The Miami agent is waiting." Her voice sounded like she was walking through a store, like she was touching things that would never belong to her. I thought about calling back. I thought about telling her what Dad said in that church and how it felt like the last match in a damp book finally caught. Instead, I texted one line, "I'm not funding your life anymore." 3 dots pulsed and then vanished. No reply. I stood, washed my glass, and wiped the counter until the marble shone. My house looked the way I wanted my days to look, clear, honest, paid for. I turned off the lights room by room and left only the small lamp by the door, a warm coin of glow on the floorboards. I lifted my suitcase and felt how light it was. Maybe that was the point, to carry only what I chose. I locked the door behind me and listened to the click. It sounded like a new kind of yes. Dawn met me on the curb with a thin wind and a sky the color of tin. I rolled my suitcase into the car and told the driver to take me to JFK. The streets of New York were quieter than I had ever seen them, as if the city had agreed to stop and breathe with me for a few hours. Storefronts yawned open, a baker swept a square of sidewalk, and a runner crossed against a red light with the bold grace of someone who believes the morning belongs to her. I pressed my palm to the cool glass and felt a small pulse of fear. I had made big choices before. Houses, deals, dollars moved in careful lines. But this choice felt like stepping from a long shadow into a wide field. I said the word in my head, Honolulu, and the word answered back with light. At the terminal, I bought a one-way ticket with the calm swipe of a card that has never been declined. The agent wore red lipstick and wished me a good journey. I said thank you and meant it. As I passed through security, a man in front of me kept apologizing to the guard for his belt, his coins, his phone. I waited and did not rush him. When it was my turn, I lifted my arms, let the machine see me, and walked on. The waiting area felt like a small city, families building forts out of hoodies, couples sharing headphones, a soldier with a backpack too large for his narrow frame, reading a tiny book. I found a seat by the window and watched the line of planes like a string of bright fish. On the plane, I had a window seat. A woman with clear eyes and a soft green scarf sat beside me and tucked her bag under the seat with neat hands. "I'm Emily," she said, and smiled the way people smile when they've been on the road for a while and want to be gentle with strangers. She told me she was flying home after a month in Europe, where the streets are small and the church is tall, and the coffee tastes like it has a history. I told her I was starting over in Hawaii. I did not explain the wedding door or the long years of paying for peace. I said I needed sun and salt and a house where the loudest thing at night would be the sea.
"Good," she said.
"Begin again." It sounded like a blessing, and I took it as one. We rose over New York in a slow, steep arc. The river flashed, the bridges held their lines, and the city spread under us like a puzzle I had solved and carefully put back in its box. Clouds met us and then parted, and America opened below in wide, changing colors. Farmland like quilts, deserts like coins, mountains like knuckles pressed up from the dark. I thought of names that had shaped me: Robert with his hard jaw and his harder opinions, Linda with her quiet smoothing, Grace with her bright, polished need. I let their names pass through me like wind through a screen. I thought of James Whittaker, who told me once that love and money are vines that will tangle if you let them, and that you have to choose the trellis. I thought of Marcus Rivera, who believes money should nap in safe places and only wake for good reasons. They were men who never tried to own me, and for that, I would always be grateful. When the drink cart rattled near, I asked for water and a coffee. Emily ordered tea and a small packet of almonds, then told me about rivers in France, so cold they felt like a dare, and a gallery in London where the walls seemed to breathe. I liked the way she spoke, simple and true. In return, I told her about houses I had turned from wreck to refuge. A duplex in Ohio bought for $82,000 on a winter day when the street was a sheet of glass, a cottage near Savannah with cracked windows and a tired porch that now holds light like a bowl. I told her about dollars placed like seeds and the long patience it takes to watch seeds become shade. She nodded as if she could see each place as I said it. We did not talk about the number, $7-10 million, which sits in my mind like a quiet lake. We just talked about the work, the way a door feels when it opens for the first time after a long repair, the way a room smells when paint finally dries. Hours passed in the ordinary way that makes flying surreal. I wrote in my thin notebook, the one with the soft cover that fits in the pocket of my coat. I wrote about a small house near water, about swimming at sunrise, about speaking only when I mean it. I wrote that I would spend on peace and give, but wisely. I wrote that I would let Hawaii teach me how to be still. I thought about price without flinching, the plane ticket, the house I would buy, the fresh start that costs nothing and everything at once. I thought of pounds I once earned in London and how I had smiled at the conversion, as if it were a small riddle only I could solve. Money to me is not noise. It is a set of choices waiting to be made. I want those choices to sing. When the cabin dimmed and shade slid down, I rested my head against the window and watched the wing cut the light. Sleep came like a tide. In the drift of it, I saw my father pointing at me again, but this time his finger wilted into a leaf and fell. I saw my mother's hands smoothing a dress that would never lie flat. I saw Grace in a kitchen with tall white walls, reaching for a bill that would not arrive. I did not feel cruel. I felt clean. I felt like a woman who had finally placed her own name on the deed to her life. I woke to the soft clink of ice. The flight attendant smiled and asked if I wanted anything. "More water," I said, and she brought it like it mattered. Emily was asleep, her scarf a pool of green at her throat. I Open the shade an inch. The ocean looked like brushed steel rolling to the edge of the earth. Somewhere down there was the line that would become my porch view, the waves that would set the tempo of my days. I pressed my palm to the glass like I could touch the air that would soon be in my lungs. When the captain spoke, "We'll be landing in Honolulu shortly," the cabin stirred like a field of grass in the wind. People stretched and sat up and began to gather their small worlds. I tucked my notebook away, set my shoulders back, and felt the old city slide from my bones. Emily woke and smiled and squeezed my hand in a quick, friendly way. "You're going to be fine," she said. I believed her. We dropped through a bank of cloud, and then the island rose to meet us, green and gold and edged with white. I thought of the house I would find. Cedar siding, wide windows, a porch that faced the sea. I thought of wiring the funds without a tremor, dollars flowing like a river toward a home that would keep me. I thought of mornings when I would walk to a market and learn the names of fruit by taste, not by price. I thought of nights when the waves would speak in a voice older than any story told about me. The wheels touched down with a soft shiver. I felt it in my chest. We had arrived, and so had I. Hawaii met me with warm air that smelled like rain and salt. In Honolulu, I signed for a cedar house with wide windows and a porch that faced the sea. The price was $4.2 million, wired in one clean move from an account that never shakes. The realtor, a calm woman named Rachel, handed me the keys and said, "Welcome home." I believed her. The house had pale floors, a long table, and a blue couch that matched the morning sky. I kept the rooms light and spare, the way I wanted my days to be. I slept that first night with the doors open to the sound of waves. I woke at sunrise and walked down to the water. The ocean was silver at the edge and deep blue farther out, as if the day were being poured in. I swam an easy line along the shore and let my breath set the rhythm. Later, I walked to the market with a canvas bag and learned the names of fruit by taste, not by price. A man at a stall, Daniel from Boston, cut a slice of pineapple and said, "On the house." I paid anyway in dollars and he laughed. "You're stubborn," he said. "I'm steady," I said. By the end of the week, I knew my neighbors. There was an old surfer named Ben who had a white dog and a soft voice. There was a teacher named Olivia who grew herbs on her porch and traded mint for lemons from my tree. There was a carpenter named Aaron who fixed the porch rail without trying to sell me 10 other things I did not need. "You look lighter every day," Ben told me one morning as we watched the water roll in. I said, and felt the truth of it move through my chest like a small tide. In the afternoon, I set up my long table by the open doors and worked through a quiet list. I called James Whitaker in New York and asked him to finish the letters closing the old support lines. He said he already had drafts and would send them by evening. I called Marcus Rivera near Wall Street and asked him to lift the cash level to $65 million for a time, to feel the room around this new life. He said, "Done." The way men say it when they respect a choice. I paid the local taxes the same day, dollars moving like a calm river across America, and I felt proud of the order of it. Grace called from Miami on a Thursday. "My card isn't working," she said, as if the card had quit its job. I told her I closed the family accounts and paused the trust. She asked why, and I told her what Dad said at the wedding in New York and how those words had been the last straw laid on a long, slow pile. She was quiet for a long breath. "I didn't know it hurt that much," she said. "It did," I said. "But I also let it. That ends here." She asked if I hated her. "No," I said. "I love you. I just won't pay for the part of your life that keeps me small." A day later, I sent her a note, not money. I wrote that I would help with ideas and plans, but not with blind checks. I wrote that a budget can be a friend if you treat it like a mirror. I listed 3 steps, plain and short. Sell the second car. Pay off the small debts first. Call a counselor and speak the heavy things out loud. I told her I would read a plan if she wrote one. She did not reply, and that was fine. I have learned that silence is also an answer, and not always a cruel one. At night, the waves spoke like a metronome, steady and sure. I sat at the table with the porch doors open and wrote. I wrote about money and mercy, about houses and hearts, about the way America can make you and unmake you, and then make you again if you let it. I wrote about Europe, too, a little line about London rain, and the time I earned pounds and smiled at the quiet math of it. But mostly I wrote about the shore, this small house, this clean voice I finally recognized as mine. The pages are filled with simple words. I did not try to be grand. I tried to be true. One evening, Robert called from New York. The phone rang 3 times, then showed his name. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. His message was short. "Call me," he said, like a command. I did not. Instead, I wrote him a letter on good paper. I said I would speak to him if he could speak to me without the old point and the new shame. I said I was not a failed girl. I was a woman who built a life and paid for it in dollars and in time. I signed my name in a steady hand and mailed it. If he wants to meet me as I am, he knows where to find me. Days made a pattern I liked. Swim, market, work, walk, write, rest. I learned the water by color and the wind by sound. I learned which nights the stars felt near and which mornings the birds began before the light. I kept the house simple and cared for. I repaired a hinge, oiled a door, and ordered a rug that felt like soft grass under bare feet. I chose each thing with care, the way I now choose each promise. Peace can be plain, plain can be beautiful. I have the money to fill rooms, and I choose space. When I miss people, I called Maya in Manhattan and Emily in California, and we talked like women who know each other's real names. We did not talk about totals. We talked about good coffee, hard days, small wins, and the work of being kind to ourselves. When I missed noise, I walked into Honolulu and let the city remind me that life does not stop just because I changed mine. I tipped in dollars. I listened to street music. I walked home before dark and watched the porch light turn the steps gold. Here is my truth, written plain so I cannot forget it. I was called failed, and I walked away. I closed the doors that hurt me. I opened the ones that face the sea. I own my life the way I own this house. Paid in full, cared for daily, shared with care. If you ever meet me on this shore, you will hear me say it without heat or haste. I left, I learned, and I am free. And when the tide moves in and out like a long breath, I answer it with my own.